The year is 1945. World War II is ending, but for some, the terror is just beginning.
As a transport ship neared New York Harbor, carrying 43 German women and 16 children, among them Greta Hoff, the iconic Statue of Liberty offered no comfort. Instead, it was a stark, almost cruel irony. These women, many veterans of the Wehrmacht, had been systematically indoctrinated by Nazi propaganda, feeding them vivid, horrifying images of American barbarism. Stories of torture, concentration camps for enemy women, and systematic brutality. For Greta, a Signals officer captured in France, the transfer to American custody was not just a defeat. It was a perceived death sentence. The prevailing belief was chillingly clear. Americans were the most savage of the Allied forces. Yet, the moment their vessel docked at a heavily guarded military installation, the carefully constructed narratives of hate began to unravel. Instead of the snarling brutes depicted in propaganda, a young American corporal, Sarah Mitchell, extended a surprisingly gentle hand to Greta, welcoming her in accented German. This wasn't the expected brutality. The processing facility, meticulously clean and run by American military women, prioritized efficiency over intimidation. Each of the 43 women and 16 children underwent thorough medical examinations, received clean clothing, and were offered a meal that vastly surpassed the meager rations of wartime Germany. Anna Greta's 6-year-old daughter marveled at a simple orange real fruit, a moment of pure joy that shattered Marguerite's preconceived fears with the sheer weight of its unexpected humanity. This initial encounter hinted at a policy guided by principles far removed from vengeance, possibly reflecting adherence to international laws like the Geneva Conventions, which dictate the humane treatment of prisoners of war. But was this an isolated incident, or a glimpse into a profound paradigm shift? Before we delve deeper into what awaited them in Tennessee, take a moment to hit that like button and tell us in the comments where you're rewatching from. Your interaction helps us share these critical, often overlooked, chapters of history with a global audience. The institutional clarity of this approach was soon confirmed by Captain Elizabeth Warner, an American officer who addressed Greta in flawless German, her demeanor marked by genuine concern, not hostility. Warner assured them that they would be taken to an internment camp in Tennessee, where families would remain intact, and treatment would strictly adhere to the tenets of the Geneva Conventions, a framework designed to protect prisoners of war. This wasn't just a fleeting act of courtesy, it was declared policy. That night, in provisional barracks starkly cleaner and more comfortable than any Greta had known, the shimmering lights of New York through the window and abundance of electricity, unimaginable in war-ravaged Germany, presented a jarring reality. The meticulous adherence to international law, the unexpected comfort, the simple humanity shown by their captor Sit, all systematically dismantled years of ingrained Nazi propaganda. What was this enemy, whose actions so profoundly contradicted everything they had been taught? As the transport ship neared New York Harbor, Greta Hoffman's hands trembled uncontrollably. Through the confining porthole, she could discern the Statue of Liberty ascending majestically from the water, a poignant symbol of freedom that, to a woman convinced she was being delivered to her execution, felt like a bitter mockery. "They will separate us from our children," Marguerite whispered, clutching her 6-year-old daughter Anna tightly. "That is how they treat women from enemy nations in America." Greta remained silent, yet vivid images from Nazi propaganda reels flashed through her mind. American soldiers brutalizing German prisoners, captured women enduring fatal torment in concentration camps, and systematic torture designed to break the spirits of the nation's daughters. A signals officer in the Wehrmacht, she had been captured during the Allied advance into France, processed swiftly yet with detached efficiency by the British, now transferred to American custody. It felt tantamount to a death sentence. It was a prevailing belief that Americans were the most savage among the Allied forces. The vessel docked at a military installation where armed guards stood rigidly, rifles at the ready. As Greta descended the gangplank with 43 other German women and 16 children, her legs buckled so severely she nearly collapsed. "Steady, ladies," spoke in German. A young American corporal, surprisingly gentle, extended a hand to steady her arm. "Thank you," Greta managed, bewildered by this unexpected courtesy. "Welcome to America," the corporal continued in accented German. "I am Corporal Sarah Mitchell. We will process you, Then you will be sent to Camp Crossville in Tennessee. The processing facility, surprisingly warm and pristine, was operated exclusively by American military women who clearly valued streamlined efficiency over any form of intimidation. Greta watched, perplexed, as each prisoner underwent a thorough medical examination, received clean clothing, and was offered a meal far superior to anything she had eaten in the final months of the war. "Mama, look," Anna exclaimed, holding up an orange. "Real fruit." Before we reveal what awaited these frightened prisoners in Tennessee, we encourage you to share your location with us. We are always moved by the global community, connected through these powerful stories of unexpected humanity. Seeing her daughter's joy, tears streamed down Marguerite's face, not from sadness, but from the profound cognitive dissonance between the brutality she had anticipated and the kindness she had received. "Frau von Huffman," a voice speaking impeccable German announced. Captain Elizabeth Warner, an American officer, approached with a clipboard, her face etched with genuine concern. "You are scheduled for departure tomorrow morning. Do you have any immediate medical needs?" "No." "Captain, what will become of us?" Warner's expression soft. "You will be taken to an internment camp, where you will remain until repatriation arrangements are finalized. We adhere strictly to the tenets of the Geneva Conventions regarding the treatment of prisoners and the children. Families will remain together. We are not monsters." Frau Hoffmann on that night, in a provisional barracks far cleaner than any military quarters Greta had experienced in Germany, she lay awake, listening to other women's whispered discussions of their bewilderment and tentative hopes. Outside, American guards patrolled, unburdened by visible weaponry. Through the window, the lights of New York shimmered. Such abundant electricity, an impossibility for a nation purportedly devastated by war. Everything Greta had been taught about her enemy felt profoundly wrong. The train journey to Tennessee lasted 2 days, a period during which Greta's understanding of America was utterly upended. The German prisoners were not confined to cattle cars as she had expected, but ordinary passenger coaches equipped with cushioned seats, windows, devoid of bars, and access to a dining car whose provisions surpassed even those afforded to Wehrmacht officers. "This makes no sense," muttered Helga, a former nurse seated opposite Greta. "Where are the guards? The chains, the atrocities we were told about." American military police occupied the same car, yet they spent more time assisting children with overhead luggage than intimidating the prisoners. A young soldier, Private Johnson from Georgia, spent an hour patiently teaching Anna simple English phrases, much to her mother's astonishment. "Cat siati." "Cat," Anna carefully repeated, pointing to a picture book Johnson had provided. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Johnson praised, then looked at Marguerite. "Madame, she's a quick study. You should be proud." His casual kindness was more disorienting than hostility. Greta had braced herself for torture, not courtesy. Her mental preparation for martyrdom proved useless in the face of captors who treated them as human beings. As the train traversed Virginia, Greta pressed her face against the window, observing the American countryside. Farms appeared prosperous. Towns showed no signs of bombing, and the sheer abundance of everything: automobiles, electricity, well-maintained infrastructure, contradicted years of propaganda about America's supposed weakness. "Greta, Marguerite," murmured softly, "do you think they're fattening us up before what comes next? I don't know, but if this is psychological warfare, it's astonishingly sophisticated." That afternoon, Captain Warner walked through the prisoner car, meticulously inquiring about everyone's comfort, her concern appearing genuine rather than performative. "Ladies," she announced in German, "we will arrive at Camp Crossville tomorrow morning. I wish to address some concerns you undoubtedly harbor." A profound silence enveloped the car as 43 women awaited the revelation of their true fate. Camp Crossville is an internment camp, but it is also a community. You will have private barracks, medical services, educational programs, and recreational activities. Children will attend school. Families will remain together. "Why?" Greta blurted out, unable to stop herself. "Why are you being so kind to enemy prisoners?" Warner met her gaze directly. "Because the Geneva Conventions demand it, Frau Hoffmann. And because we believe that how we treat our enemies defines who we are more than how we treat our friends. That night, the train continued its southward journey through an untouched landscape. Little Anna asleep on her mother's shoulder, clutching her English picture book. The German women around them, who days earlier had trembled with fear, now quivered with confusion. These captors feeding their children, teaching them new languages, and speaking of dignity as if enemy prisoners were somehow entitled to it. Helga Greta whispered to her friend, "What if everything we were told about the Americans was a lie?" "Then we have been fighting for the wrong side all along," Helga softly replied. Outside, the electric lights of the American night twinkled all the way to the horizon, a display of opulence more devastating to German morale than any weapon could achieve. Camp Crossville emerged from the Tennessee morning mist like something from a dream or an elaborately constructed illusion. Greta's imagined barbed wire fortress was absent, replaced by neat wooden barracks arranged around a central quadrangle flower beds, and an area that looked like a playground where several children were already at play, supervised by American guards who smiled more often than they scowled. As their transport truck passed through gates that were wide open rather than locked, "This cannot be real," Marguerite murmured. The processing building was efficient, yet humane. Each family was assigned a barracks, provided with a meal schedule, and given an information packet that surprisingly included a small map of recreational facilities. Frau Hofmann said, "Sergeant Linda Hayes, the camp reception coordinator. You and your roommates will be in Barrack 7. It has 4 beds, a small common area, and private storage space." "Private storage space," Greta repeated, certain she had misheard the English. "Yes, madam, we believe people need personal space, even in internment." The barracks exceeded all the expectations Greta had striven not to harbor. Clean bunks, with actual mattresses, windows with curtains, a small stove for heating, and most shockingly, a private bathroom with hot running water. "Mama!" Anna shrieked with delight, turning on the faucet and watching steam rise into the sink. "Look, hot water whenever we want it." Marguerite collapsed onto a bed, overwhelmed with emotion. "Greta, I had hot water twice a month in Germany, and I was an officer's wife. These Americans are providing it to prisoners." Their 2 other roommates arrived shortly thereafter. Frieda, a former teacher from Hamburg, and Katharina, a young widow whose husband had fallen at Normandy. "Have you seen the mess hall?" Katharina asked, her eyes still wide with disbelief. "They're serving meat, real meat, and vegetables I haven't seen since before the war." That afternoon, Captain Warner conducted an orientation session in the camp's recreation hall, a space furnished with chairs, tables, books, and musical instruments available for prisoner use. "Ladies," Warner began, "I know this is confusing. You were taught Americans are barbaric, that we would torture prisoners, that you would be treated cruelly. I am here to tell you that was propaganda. Subscribe to hear more fascinating stories of enemies finding unexpected humanity, and how fear transformed into understanding through simple acts of dignity and respect in history's darkest conflicts." She gestured to a chart displaying the camp facilities. "We have a school for children, a library, a medical clinic, and recreational programs. You will receive letters from home through Red Cross channels, and you may write to your families." "Why?" Greta demanded, unable to remain silent. "Why provide such things for enemy prisoners?" Warner's expression was patient. "Because the Geneva Conventions mandate humane treatment, and because America believes that how we conduct ourselves in war matters. We do not abandon our values simply because we are fighting an enemy." After the briefing, Greta and Helga walked around the camp, observing details that challenged all their beliefs. American gods politely greeted prisoners. Children played freely on the playground, and the overall atmosphere felt more like a displaced person's camp than a prison. "It's psychological warfare," Helga asserted. "They are trying to make us forget we are German, to erode our loyalties through kindness." But even as she spoke, they saw little Anna laughing joyfully, as an American guard pushed her on a swing, a child's pure delight seeming to contradict any sinister purpose behind the Americans' hospitality. 3 weeks into their internment, Greta sat in the camp library, a building that would have been impressive even in peacetime Germany. She struggled to reconcile her experiences with everything she had been taught about captivity. Around her, German women read books, in both German and English. attended language classes, and engaged in discussions that would have been impossible under Nazi Germany's rigid hierarchy. Frau Hofmann called Mrs. Elena Thompson the American librarian, who took a particular interest in helping prisoners improve their English. I found that book on engineering you requested. Greta accepted the technical manual, her hands no longer trembling. The initial fear had receded, replaced by a more complex emotion, gratitude, a gratitude that felt like betrayal. Mrs. Thompson, may I ask you a personal question? Of course, dear. Why do you work here? You could have a normal library position, yet you spend your days assisting enemy prisoners. Mrs. Thompson took a seat opposite Greta. My son is in the army somewhere in Europe. I pray every day that if he is captured, someone will treat him as kindly as I treat you, ladies. The humanity in this simple answer tightened Greta's throat. She had been prepared for propaganda, manipulation, or strategic deception, not the genuine maternal concern of a woman whose son might be fighting German soldiers. That afternoon, an unexpected announcement came. Captain Warner had arranged for a medical professional to conduct health examinations. Surprisingly, the doctor was German, herself a prisoner from another camp, permitted to practice medicine. Dr. Anna Weber, with professional diligence, carefully examined each woman, but afterward, she pulled Greta aside. Frau Huffman, I need to tell you something about American healthcare. They don't just check for illnesses. They actually treat conditions. I am performing surgeries here that were impossible in Germany during the last months of the war. They allow you to operate. They trust me with scalpels, anesthetics, and American patients. Last week, I removed an appendix from one of the guards. Afterwards, he thanked me. Dr. Weber's voice held both wonder and bewilderment. These Americans are either exceptionally naive, or they genuinely believe in treating every human being with dignity. That evening, the camp hosted a movie screening in the recreation hall, an American film with German subtitles. As Greta watched it, As a Wonderful Life, alongside her fellow prisoners and American guards who chose to attend, she realized something profound. Her captors were sharing their culture, not forcing conformity. Mama, why is everyone crying? Anna whispered, pointing at the American guards wiping away tears during the movie's climax. Because they are human, Marguerite softly replied. Just like us. After the film, Greta found herself speaking with Sergeant Hayes, whose duties included overseeing prisoner morale, yet whose approach seemed focused on genuine understanding rather than surveillance. Frau Hofmann, may I ask you a question? Hayes asked carefully. What did you expect to happen when you arrived in America? Greta considered lying, then decided honesty might be safer with these strange captors than deceit. Probably execution, or forced labor until death. Sexual assault, separation from my family. Everything your propaganda said we Germans did to prisoners, we assumed you would do to us. Hayes's expression showed genuine sadness. And what did you find? You gave my roommate's daughter hot chocolate and taught her English. You allowed a German doctor to perform surgery on American soldiers. You showed us a movie that made your own guards cry. Greta, paused. You are destroying everything we believed about you, and it is more daunting than torture. 6 months after her arrival at Camp Crossville, Greta received a letter through Red Cross channels that changed everything. The thin sheet of paper, carefully scrutinized, brought news of her sister in Berlin. Their home had been destroyed by bombing. Their mother was dead, their father missing. Germany was shattered, occupied, facing an uncertain future. She sat in the camp's quiet reading room, the letter in her hands, tears blurring her vision. The American staff around her noticed her distress, and within minutes, Captain Warner was there with tea in a private office for them to talk. I am so sorry for your loss, Warner said simply, taking a seat opposite Greta. Would you like to talk about it? The kindness broke something inside Greta. Why are you being so kind to me? My country bombed your allies, killed your soldiers, started a war that destroyed millions of lives. Why do you still treat me like someone worthy of sympathy? Warner was silent for a moment. Because you are a human being, Frau Hofmann. Not a Nazi, not a German, not an enemy, but a person who has just lost her mother. Grief knows no borders. That afternoon, something unprecedented occurred. The American staff organized a memorial service for Greta's mother, a simple ceremony in the camp's small chapel. where German prisoners and American guards gathered to honor a woman they had never met, simply because her daughter needed support. Marguerite read a scripture passage in German. Mrs. Thompson played the piano, and Captain Warner offered words of solace that transcended national boundaries. "We gather today," Warner said, "to remember that war takes mothers from daughters, regardless of their allegiance. Today, we are not captors and prisoners. We are human beings acknowledging loss." After the service, Greta found herself surrounded by a circle of women, both German prisoners and American staff, offering their condolences. Private Johnson, who had taught Anna English, approached, his eyes red. "My mother passed away last year. If you need to talk, I'm here." An enemy soldier offering comfort to an enemy prisoner, sharing a common grief, finally shattered all Greta's remaining defenses. These Americans were not waging psychological warfare. They were simply being decent human beings, responding to pain when they saw it. That night, Greta and her roommates sat in their barracks, making a decision that would have been unimaginable 6 months earlier. "I will apply for permission to remain in America once repatriation is feasible," she quietly announced. A silence fell over the room. Katerina spoke first. "Greta, that is turning your back on Germany. Germany would rather see me die than surrender. Germany told me Americans were monsters. Germany destroyed itself, and it took my mother with it." Greta's voice grew firm. "These Americans, as my captors, have shown me more kindness than my own government ever did as a citizen." Frida nodded slowly. "I have been thinking the same thing. What future is there in Germany? Occupation, destruction, punishment for crimes we did not personally commit but will collectively bear." "But what about our families?" Marguerite began. "If they survived, they are welcome to join us," Greta replied. "America has programs for family reunification," Captain Warner told me. In the following weeks, similar conversations echoed throughout Camp Crossville. Women who had once trembled with fear were now considering permanent emigration to the country they had been taught to hate. This transformation was not about abandoning German identity. It was about recognizing that the Americans who had captured them understood a fundamental truth that Nazi Germany had forgotten: that treating your enemies with dignity could transform them into something more valuable than defeated adversaries. They could become grateful immigrants, living proof of the difference between authoritarian cruelty and democratic compassion. 1 year after her arrival, Greta stood in Captain Warner's office, holding an application form that represented the most significant decision of her life: a petition for permanent residency in the United States. "Frau Hofmann," Warner said carefully, "I hope you understand what this means. You will be renouncing your German citizenship, pledging allegiance to the nation that defeated your country, and you may never see family left behind in Germany again." "I understand, Captain, but I also understand that the Germany I knew no longer exists. The country that sent me to war was built on lies of racial superiority and enemy barbarism." Greta's voice was resolute. "Those lies shattered the moment your soldiers showed me kindness." Warner studied her for a long moment. "You know, there will be opposition. Americans who lost family members to German soldiers will want to understand why we are allowing former enemy citizens to immigrate. Then I will prove my worth through action, not words." That afternoon, Greta attended a meeting where 15 other German women had gathered to discuss the same decision. The room was thick with tension as the women grappled with loyalty, survival, and the unsettling fact that their former enemies had proven kinder than their own government. My sister wrote from Berlin. Katharina sighed, holding up a recent letter. She lives in Rubel, queues for bread, and watches Russian soldiers patrol the streets. She asked if there was any way to join me here. "That's the irony," observed Dr. Weber, who had also applied for residency. "We were sent to America as a punishment, and now our families want to join us voluntarily." Frida raised a practical concern. "But what can we do here? We have no skills Americans need, no money, no connections." "Actually," interrupted Mrs. Thompson, who had been invited to the meeting, "that's not entirely true. The State Department is establishing integration programs for skilled immigrants, teachers, nurses, engineers. America needs workers to support its post-war expansion." In the ensuing months, Camp Crossville transitioned from an internment facility into an unexpected training center. American staff provided English language classes, vocational training, and cultural orientation for those prisoners who opted for permanent residency. Greta, with her engineering background, was placed in an advanced program that would qualify her for work in American manufacturing. The irony was lost on no one. A former Wehrmacht signals officer learning to build American communication equipment. Frau Hoffmann, her mentor, Mr. Robert Schun, a Chinese-American engineer, commented, "Your technical knowledge is excellent. The principles are the same, only the application differs." "Mr. Chun, do you mind teaching a former enemy?" Mr. Chun smiled sadly. "My parents fled China during the Japanese occupation. I understand what it means to be displaced by war. Besides, you are no longer my enemy now. You are my student." The simple humanity in these words, spoken by a man whose family had suffered due to Axis aggression, further solidified Greta's decision to embrace her new country. That evening, as she walked through the camp that had become a home rather than a prison, Greta reflected on her journey from trembling prisoner to hopeful immigrant. Around her, German women and American staff conversed freely. Children played games that mixed German and English words, the barriers between captors and captured having dissolved into something resembling a community. Little Anna ran up to her, speaking in a mix of German and English. Greta, Sergeant Hayes said, "I could help at the library tomorrow." Looking at the child's pure joy, unburdened by national identity or wartime hatreds, Greta realized the next generation would heal the wounds their parents' generation had inflicted. 2 years after her arrival in America, Greta stood in a federal courthouse in Knoxville, Tennessee, raising her right hand to take the oath of naturalization. Beside her stood 14 other former prisoners, all of whom had chosen America over returning to their devastated homeland. "I hereby declare," Greta recited, in carefully practiced English, on oath, "that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty." As the words left her lips, she felt the weight of transformation. She was no longer Greta Hoffmann, German prisoner of war. She was becoming Greta Hoffmann, American citizen, an identity she had never imagined. Judge Thomas Harrison, a veteran who had fought in Europe, presided over the ceremony with solemn dignity. Afterwards, he addressed the new citizens directly. "Ladies, I will not pretend this will be easy for everyone to accept. Some Americans will question why we are granting citizenship to former enemies, but I believe America's strength comes from welcoming those who freely choose our values, even if they once stood against us." The ceremony concluded with the presentation of citizenship certificates and small American flags. As Greta held hers, she noticed Captain Warner in the audience, tears streaming down her face. "Captain." Greta approached after the ceremony. "Are you all right? I am so proud, Frau Hoffmann, or should I say Miss Hoffmann, American citizen." Warner smiled through her tears. "2 years ago, you arrived trembling with fear. Today, you stand tall as an American. This transformation is proof that our values work. Dat evening, the new citizens celebrated at a small reception organized by Camp Crossville staff and local community members who had supported the integration programs. The blend of German and American accents, former prisoners and former guards, created an incredible atmosphere of harmony. Greta Marguerite, now also a naturalized citizen, called out. Mrs. Thompson brought her famous apple pie. "You simply must try it." As they ate American pie and practiced English conversation, Private Johnson, now Sergeant Johnson, approached with news. "Miss Hoffmann, I received a reply from immigration regarding your sister's application. Her papers have been approved. She will arrive from Berlin next month." Greta's hands trembled again, this time not from fear, but from gratitude and relief. Her sister would escape the ruins of Berlin to join her in this strange new country that had turned enemies into family. "Sergeant Johnson, I don't know how to thank you for helping with her application. You can thank me by being a good American citizen. MAAM. Prove that showing kindness to prisoners was the right decision." 6 months later, Greta began working as a communications engineer for a firm in Nashville, her German technical training now serving American industrial expansion. Her sister, Elise, had arrived, enrolled in nursing school, and was slowly adjusting to the abundance of American life after the devastation of Berlin. Greta, Elise, said one evening in their small apartment, "I still cannot believe this is real. We have electricity all day, hot water whenever we want it, and more food than we can eat. In Berlin, we struggled for scraps. I know. It took me months to stop hoarding food, to stop expecting the kindness to end. Do you ever regret it? Choosing America over Germany?" Greta thought back to her arrival on American soil, trembling with fear. Convinced she would be tortured and killed, she recalled Captain Warner's patient kindness, Mrs. Thompson's maternal care, and Sergeant Johnson's friendship that transcended wartime divisions. Never Germany taught me fear and hatred. America taught me that if someone is brave enough to show compassion first, former enemies can become family. 5 years after taking her oath of naturalization, Greta stood before a congressional committee in Washington, D.C., testifying about the prisoner integration programs that had transformed her life. The hearing room was packed with journalists, politicians, and representatives from various immigrant advocacy groups. Ms. Hoffman, Senator Mitchell from Tennessee, began, "You have become something of a symbol for the successful integration of enemies. Could you explain to the committee why the U.S. government should continue to support programs like these?" Greta surveyed the room, noting both supportive and skeptical faces. She chose her words carefully. "Senator, when I arrived in America, I trembled with fear because Nazi propaganda led me to believe Americans were monsters who would torture and kill me. Yet, the people I encountered treated me with a dignity I never experienced as a citizen under Nazi rule." She paused, letting the statement resonate. That kindness did not just change my life. It changed my entire understanding of what a government could be. America proved that strength does not require cruelty, that victory does not demand vengeance, and that former enemies can become loyal citizens through simple acts of respect. Representative Davis from New York leaned forward. "But Ms. Hoffman, some constituents feel we are rewarding enemy citizens who fought against the United States. How do you respond to that?" "I respond by pointing out that I, as a grateful immigrant, contribute more to America than I ever could have as a resentful enemy. I pay taxes. I work in American industry. I raise my daughter to be a proud American. Is that not a better outcome than leaving me in Germany to fester with resentment and hatred?" After 3 hours of testimony, Greta was joined by others who had traversed similar journeys. Dr. Weber, now chief of surgery at a Nashville hospital. Katharina, teaching German at a local high school. Frida, working for the State Department's cultural exchange programs. "What you represent," Chairman Williams concluded in his closing remarks, "is proof that America's greatest weapon is not military might, but the power of our ideals to transform those who experience them firsthand." That evening, Greta attended a reunion dinner with former Camp Crossville staff and prisoners. Captain Warner, now retired and working for the UN refugee program, raised her glass in a toast. To the ladies who arrived trembling and left standing tall, "You proved that compassion is not a weakness. It is the foundation of lasting peace." As glasses clinked around the table, Americans and Germans, former guards and former prisoners, now simply friends, Greta reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them all together. 10 years later, Greta attended another ceremony, this time her daughter Anna's college graduation. The 6-year-old girl who had arrived in America filled with fear was now the class valedictorian, speaking eloquently on the importance of treating all people with dignity. "My mother taught me," Anna said during her graduation speech, "that the bravest thing you can do is choose compassion when the world expects vengeance. America chose compassion when treating its enemy prisoners, and that choice transformed not only individual lives but the course of history." After the ceremony, Greta, her sister Elise, and Anna, 3 generations of women walked across the college campus. Greta thought of the trembling girl who had arrived on American soil all those years ago, the girl who expected brutality but found humanity, who expected torture but received an education, who expected to die but found a future beyond her wildest dreams. "Mama," Anna asked, walking between her mother and aunt, "do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had gone back to Germany?" Greta looked at her daughter, intelligent, confident, and thoroughly American. Then at her sister, who had escaped the ruins of Berlin to build a successful nursing career. "Sometimes She answered honestly, but then I remember arriving at Camp Crossville, convinced I would die there. Instead, I learned that the enemy I had been taught to fear understood something my own government never did, that even in defeat, treating people with dignity can forge a loyalty that force can never achieve. They walked in comfortable silence towards the parking lot, Greta's car bearing a bumper sticker that summarized her life. Its journey in 3 words. Proud American immigrant, the girl who arrived trembling had indeed found something unexpected in America. Not the brutality she feared, but the fundamental human dignity that transformed enemies into citizens, prisoners into patriots, and fear into gratitude that would last for generations.